Right, guys, it's finally happened. We've been waiting for this moment for a long time now. The deadline for the UK and the EU to decide whether they want to have an extension to the Brexit transition is here. The decision has been made. The UK will be completely independent as of the 1st of January 2021. This means clean Brexit is coming. Both sides have now officially agreed that you're either going to be having a WTO Brexit or a free trade agreement. None of this nonsense with the ECJ and everything else, because David Frost has rejected everything. So this is the news that we have that was published by Guido Fawkes initially, and then obviously all the other mainstream media journalists have been following it. And the message that we have from number 10, the press office, is that the high-level meeting between the Prime Minister and President von der Leyen, President Michel, and President Sassoli, so many presidents, will take place by video conference on the afternoon of Monday, the 15th of June. They're now going to agree to a timetable to sort out the trade deal. I don't know what they were doing until now, but finally agreed to something, which is interesting. Today we have a special guest with us, which I'm going to introduce in a minute. Well, you know who she is. It's Emily Hewitson, pro-Brexit activist, who's quite well known on Twitter. But before we get to Emily, we know that this is a big moment for the UK because this hasn't been easy. You've had countries like France and Macron, who's been making things difficult. Even right now, Macron has now split from Brussels over the fisheries policy. He's not too happy about this whole situation and the deadline. On the other hand, we knew that a couple of years ago, well, actually 3 years ago, back in 2017, when this whole thing started, Angela Merkel did this dirty move, well, according to the Express, toxic move. It was her decision to push the EU to not negotiate a trade deal and focus on the withdrawal agreement first. And Theresa May said, yes, that was a problem we had, and this is why we had this delay until now. But we are going to be a free, independent country with a clean Brexit. We now are going to be celebrating with Emily Hewitson. Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, especially after this news. How are you?
Not bad. Yeah, it's been a kind of chaotic few weeks, few months with everything that's been happening. So it's good to have some good news, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is probably the only thing that the government has been strong on recently. And as a Brexiteer, obviously, I'm really happy about that. But there are a lot of other areas where I feel that Boris Johnson is lacking a little bit.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're specifically kind of talking about. I mean, the last few stages of the lockdown policies, and then obviously what's happening now in the streets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the lockdown policy has become quite contradictory. I mean, within a few weeks, children will be able to go to zoos, safari parks, Thorpe Park, yet they still cannot go back to school, which I just think is outrageous. And I think another place where the government's been weak, which you didn't mention, is also on the issue of illegal migrants. I think we were very slow off the mark when Britons were being fined simply for bringing their partner to an essential shop. There was police forces that were actually fining people for doing that. Yet we allowed illegal migrants to come to this country unchecked, and it was only till later that the Home Secretary finally put in place that 2-week quarantine for migrants coming in.
Yeah, speaking of migration, you know how Nigel Farage recently has been campaigning a lot around Dover to expose what's happening there. And actually, guys, watch to the end of the video, because I'm going to do a preview for the next video, which is about what happened with Nigel Farage and LBC. We'll talk about that later. But Nigel has been exposing the illegal migration, and the Home Office have been very slow on this. And do you think, because this is going to be a big issue as of January, when we officially leave all ties that we have with the EU, and I don't think the Home Office will have any, and the Border Force have any excuse anymore to cooperate with the French in that sense. Is this a warning and a kind of important point for the Tory government? Because I don't think if they don't act on it by then, people will be quite angry, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the big reasons for leaving the EU wasn't necessarily to stop immigration by any means, but it was to control immigration and have control of our borders. And I think by doing this, it's actually showing that perhaps we don't have as much control as we would like. And it is really highlighting one of the problems with the EU, like you said, with our relationship with France. So I think, as you say, that there should be no excuses after this. And I think if the Home Office are slow to act and do not see it as an urgent issue, that there will be consequences for that in terms of public opinion.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues for this government is, as you said earlier, they lack kind of strength in certain policy areas, and so I think this could be their moment if Boris Johnson wants to get back, and as people say, the Boris bounce and all that. This could be his moment if he takes advantage of this. Firstly, clean Brexit, obviously. Secondly, deal with the border issues. But going back to the whole Brexit stuff, because it's been a weird journey, and I remember after the 2016 referendums, a lot of people, including myself, we were celebrating, thinking, finally, we won the battle, it's done. But you yourself got big in this game after the referendum, because apparently the campaign wasn't over. How has been your experience? Tell us about your experience and the attacks, the support you've got ever since you got involved with this whole thing.
Yes, absolutely. So at the time of the referendum, I wasn't old enough to vote, but having visited the European Parliament myself, I realised that it was not representative of your average guy in Stoke or wherever it may be. And I was always a Leaver, but really afterwards, it didn't become a case of Leave versus Remain. It became a case of Democrats versus anti-Democrats. And I think that was where the big battle was. It wasn't even a case of me wanting to leave the EU, although of course I did. It was more the fact that we had voted for it and it needed to be implemented. We live in a democratic country, and I want my kids to grow up in a democracy. And I think that would have been a very bad decision and very dangerous for our democracy if that did not go through. So I'm glad it did. But obviously, throughout my journey, I've had lots of interactions by the so-called FBPE and some not so nice interactions. I mean, we've had a couple of threats thrown in, a lot of people calling me a Russian bot, which is quite interesting. I think the horror is that obviously their whole argument is young people hate the idea of Brexit and they want to stay in the EU. But actually, when a few young people come along and they say, actually, we want our freedom, we want democracy, they kind of get scared, and their only defense mechanism is to give personal insults. And it's quite shocking, really, that you've got a 40-year-old man attacking a 19, at the time, now 20-year-old girl just because she believes in democracy.
Yeah, how dare you? Because that battle isn't just about Brexit. You were talking about democracy and self-determination. Right now, there's another battleground. It's the same argument, it's just different area, which is about what's happening with the hard left, the Marxists, the cultural Marxists on the streets of the UK, US, and other places. And when you look deep down in terms of the issue, what it is, what the agenda is, because they have already said that their agenda is to bring down capitalism, bring down the Western systems. It's basically anti-democracy because they don't trust ordinary people to make their own decisions. They want to tell people what to think, how to think, what to watch. Is this dangerous for the younger generation going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, we were introduced streaming as this great new tool where we could search and find and have access to a whole wide range of diverse films, movies, shows, and they all had diverse ideas. And I think that is so important in a democracy. I think the way to counter maybe extremist views is by letting them be heard. I think that exact thing happened when we had the BNP leader on Question Time a few years back, and that was the way in which he was really deplored by his supporters. So I think it is a very dangerous game censoring things, and it will actually lead to more extremism, and we will see the rise of the right.
Yeah, I think the best way to tackle any side, any sort of extreme kind of argument is to expose it, to debate it, and if it's ridiculous, then humiliate it instead of shutting it down. And this is a big problem that we have. And I think with the Brexit side, again, for years and years, people were told that you're stupid, and also even the thought of leaving the EU is some sort of extreme view at the time. Now it's acceptable, obviously. I mean, generally it is actually, regardless of what we hear in the media. More ordinary people actually are proud to be like, oh yeah, I did vote leave, and despite the fact that a lot of people were talking about how this is going to be the worst decision, and also before we even left after the vote, economically it's going to be disastrous. We've had just the latest news that Unilever, their headquarters, is actually moving to London. So, what happened to this car crash that we're supposed to be having? It's the doom and gloom. Talk about the doom and gloom, Emily.
Oh gosh, not the dreaded doom and gloom. I mean, I think the most important way to educate our history is by having statues which you can read about. Destroying them and pretending our past didn't exist is again very dangerous, and it will only stop us from progressing. And you're right, this country has so many opportunities outside of the EU, and I think it's a really, really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, you brought up the topic of statues and everything. Actually, after this video at 8 p.m., I'm going to be posting the next video, which is going to be about what's happening in London, especially in Westminster, with the Churchill statue that's now being protected. Also, Nigel Farage and LBC. We're going to talk about that as well. The saga continues, and to make sure to actually watch at 8 p.m. We have a lot to talk about on that topic. But Emily, I want to say massive thank you. Do you have any last few words on this issue?
No, just that I'm proud of my country, and I think more people should be able to say, I am proud to live in Great Britain because we're a great country, guys.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.